Welcome, everybody. Just waiting for people to come in. So welcome to today's national launch of Good Food Local. I can see that people are still coming in. Just to let you all know that recording of this session is taking place. That's set to auto record on Zoom. While everyone arrives, we're shortly going to play an introductory video while you all get yourself settled in. So welcome.
Oh, you're on mute, Sarah.
Thank you for that short, amazing little film from our design team. It's great to see that. And welcome everybody to today's webinar on the national launch of the Good Food Local platform. So as people come in, just to introduce myself, I'm the Director of Programmes at Sustain. I'm Sarah Williams, and Sustain are the Alliance for Better Food and Farming, and we've been supporting better food and farming systems for over 20 years. As part of this, I have the pleasure of overseeing and developing and scaling our really innovative work at a local level, work that we see unlock the power of transformational change within our food and farming system. So please, we're encouraging people to introduce themselves on the chat and to share resources as you see fit. As those of you who have been to Sustain events before, we do really encourage the power of networking amongst each other, and even in the virtual world that can still be done. If you have specific questions as we go along, please put those in the Q&A. So the purpose of today's session is really to launch our Good Food Local platform. This is to help more local authorities drive change, and we're really excited about today. Great to see all of you flooding in, up to over 100, which is fantastic news. And for those of you that don't know the history, Good Food Local started in London around 11 years. I think at that time it was called Good Food for London. And without knowing it really, colleagues and others were introducing a way of really helping us practically join up food work across local government and supporting all those who need to think in a food systems way. What we also have achieved is carving out a really much needed space for food policy and practice in times where attention on this stuff really can be quite cyclical. And as we know, food issues often fall through the cracks of other departments. I also just briefly wanted to take a moment to thank all of the pioneers in London local authorities who've worked really hard to make this a success, as well as the Mayor of London and their food policy team who've been critical to Good Food for London. As we now know, this has been rolled out to the North East, so we also want to say a massive thank you to all of our colleagues in the North East and the Association for Directors of Public Health, who've been championing in the region, and also from our funders, Impact on Urban Health. We know that at local level, particularly that at the councils and those through food partnerships, this is one of the most exciting areas of the food system transformation we have at the moment. And so that's why we're really delighted that we're here with all of you today, up to over 130 of you now, to share this great opportunity for everyone to get on board with our Good Food for Local platform. But we still need you all pioneering out there. And so those who want to make a difference, we really hope that today gives you the inspiration and insight you need to do so. My colleague is just going to introduce a quick poll for you all to share, to just let us know what role and who you are. So this gives us a really good overview of who's here today to help us tailor how we can support you. While you're filling in that poll, just to recap on what you're going to hear today. So we're going to hear from the Sustain team. We're also going to hear from our evaluators who've been doing an evaluation of our London work, as well as those who've been leading on the North East rollout. As I mentioned before, please put any questions in the Q&A function to pose any questions, and we'll have time to respond to these after we've heard from the speakers. Also want to take this moment to remind you that we are a diverse and inclusive community, and we do not tolerate any form of discrimination. Please be considerate of other people's points of views, and please do not use any offensive language or inappropriate cultural references. We want to have a great event where everyone feels safe and respected. If you have any concerns, do contact a member of the team. So if we could look at the results of the first poll, if that is possible. Okay, fantastic. So great to see that we've hit our key audience. So lots of local authority people in the room, as well as food partnerships, a couple of councillors, we will be kind to you, and also some academics and researchers and a few others in there lurking. So please do introduce yourself. But thank you, that's really helpful. I'm going to ask Alan to begin the sharing the screen for the first presentation. And while you do that, Alan, I'm going to hand over to Hannah Crump, our wonderful local policy coordinator, who's really been the driving force behind a lot of this work, along with Emily O'Brien, who's a freelancer who has driven the national benchmarking rollout and has a long-standing history in working on local food partnerships, and with the Sustainable Food Places Network. We really couldn't have done any of this without them. But over to you both.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So I'm Hannah, everybody. It's really fantastic to have you all here today, and I'm joined by Emily, as Sarah has mentioned. Before I go on to our presentation, I also wanted to give a nod to our other member of the Good Food Local team, Isabel Rice, who joins us today as our food poverty coordinator and coordinates our work in London. Next slide, please, Alan. Thank you. So a little bit of the history of Good Food for All Londoners. So we have been supporting councils to drive change in their local areas for over 13 years in London through Good Food for All Londoners. So over that time, we developed a framework to help local authorities track, progress and celebrate local food work, spanning policy areas that sit under several council departments, with the goal of supporting residents to access affordable, healthy and climate and nature-friendly food. Almost all councils in London participate in what is now Good Food Local London, and we run the project with support of the Mayor of London, GLA and other regional partners. So as Sarah mentioned, we're really lucky to be joined by our evaluators, the University of Nottingham today, who've recently conducted an impact evaluation of the work in London. And the findings show some really positive results and impact among councils, with many using Good Food Local to prioritise action, support advocacy and to take a more systematic approach to food. So we'll be hearing more on that later. Next slide, please. Thanks, Ellen. So our ambition for Good Food Local is to take this approach to more local authorities in the UK to drive more change in local areas. In 2023, we were funded by Impact on Urban Health, and we began to roll out this approach to other regions, starting with the North East, and with the aim of reducing health inequalities in the region and to make healthy, sustainable food more accessible. So this work is coordinated by the Association of Directors of Public Health, and we are 1.5 years in with our work in the region, and we are working with all 12 councils who are participating in the project and benchmarking plus Cumberland. It's really early days, but our reporting shows us at the first round of results that councils have helped to galvanise action, and there have been wider benefits, including increased partnership work in the local area. We'll hear more from Craig Blundred from the North East on this later. Next slide, please. Thank you. And over to Emily.
Thanks, Hannah. So we know we're in challenging times for local authorities, and that whether that's financial demands or demands on services. And yet those of you here who are already engaged in work around food systems and food in your places know that food can be such a powerful answer for so many of those challenges. So whether you're looking for sort of solutions around the cost of living crisis, around the climate or nature crises, around the health crises, mental health crises that we're all facing, or whether your authority is more focused around food resilience or your local food economy or your growth plans, food can contain so many answers to some of those challenges. Next slide, please. So I think the challenge, though, is where, if you're not doing that kind of work already, where do you start? So this platform is particularly designed to give you a snapshot, whether you decide to do it as an individual or as a group of authorities, to understand how your local authority is doing currently. And that can be useful whether you're already engaged or just starting on that journey. And it's also a chance to track your progress over time, so you have the opportunity to repeat the survey annually or in a way that suits you. One of the key things that authorities tell us who've already been piloting this work is that it's helped them to focus. So we all have limited resources. Where do we put those resources? And also that it's helped local authorities to learn from others. And the opportunity, obviously, with a national rollout is to be able to learn from each other right across the country. And I think the other thing to say that people have found helpful is it's a public-facing site, so it does allow you to then profile your council's activity and your ability and your contribution as a partner with that wider place-based work that I know many of you are engaged with. Next slide, please. So basically, what is it? So there's a platform, a simple-to-use online platform with self-assessment tools on it. So you self-assess, and those areas that you'd be assessing around are based on the Sustainable Food Places themes for those of you already engaged. You can do it individually or you can do it as a group. When you've submitted your survey, you can choose to feature on a map that shows all of the regions that have participated so far. And there's also an opportunity to do some shouting, so to talk a little bit about what you've done and to kind of showcase your achievements. And that's an opportunity then for Sustain to amplify those and say more about those. Next slide. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Emily. So just a bit more about how to sign up. You can see our web link here on screen. We'll be sharing it in the chat as well and in any of our follow-up communications today. The platform is now live, so please do register your local authority to get started. Remember that this is a cross-local authority assessment, so do take a look at the questions which are available on the platform and reach out to your colleagues to make those connections and find out who can support you with their answers. It's another really positive finding from our London evaluation that this sort of work can really help to set up those connections and networks internally across your teams. And just to note that the self-assessment at the moment is aimed for upper tier local authorities in England and Northern Ireland. Authorities in Wales and Scotland may like to wait until any necessary adjustments have been made to account for the different contexts in which you operate. And if you're a district or a borough council in England, please do work with your county council. Thank you. Next slide, please, Alan. Thank you, Sarah. Back to you.
Amazing. I loved that. As a very practical person, and just seeing how it all works is great. And so thank you so much to the team for putting that together. And thank you to Hannah and Emily, both for that presentation and for all the amazing work you've been doing behind the scenes to make this tool as workable and usable as possible for local authorities. Next, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Anne Tobalik, who's the Associate Professor of Operational Management at the University of Nottingham, and has been working on our evaluation along with her colleague, Eleanor Pagali, who's a researcher who's been getting into the detail of how this work has impacted food systems in London. So over to you both.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for the introduction, and hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to present with you to you some highlights of the work we've done over the last few months, looking at Good Food Local in London and engaging with the local authorities in London on this topic. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a bit of context and a quick insight into the method that we used to carry out the evaluation. So we actually rolled out a survey with all the boroughs that had engaged in Good Food Local in London, and to understand the impact that Good Food Local had on their work on food systems and how it supported councils over the years. So in the survey, we were specifically asking questions to try and measure the impact and the usefulness of Good Food Local, highlight areas for improvement of the programme that could inform the national rollout. So the methodology was an online survey, which we kept opened between January and February 2025. We sent out the survey to 2 key contacts in each of the councils, and obviously dealt with the data anonymously, and we analysed it independently. Our sample overall, we had 28 respondents to the survey who belonged to 23 councils, and we were able to pull out some really interesting insights, particularly statistical insights, but also qualitative insights based on the experiences of the council engaging with Good Food Local. I will ask for the next slide, please. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to focus on the highlights that have come out of our work. And there are 4 points I will touch on now. We will hold a longer webinar in June to discuss more in depth the findings. So this is just basically giving you a bit of a taster of what's come out. But overall, an overwhelming sense of the positive impact that Good Food Local has had in London. So the first highlight is around how Good Food Local has actually supported a systemic approach to food. So 72% of the respondents to our survey said that Good Food Local significantly encouraged a systemic approach to food, allowed them to build collaborations across different departments and different teams across the councils in which they were working. Council used the 3 levels of action, so foundations, good practices and leadership, to track their progress and advocate for policy changes. The case studies and the scoring tools specifically helped them identify local gaps and inspired action. So we've got a lovely quote here from one of the participants. The case studies have been immensely helpful in which direction we should move and what partnership we need to form to take actions forward. The second highlight is how it's helped them structure and strengthen their own food strategies. So Good Food Local has supported the boroughs in developing their long-term strategies and the action plans, particularly when going onto the websites and using the resources, the report, the scoring tables, the league tables, the maps, and the case studies were particularly helpful. And some councils have used the framework to align food with public health, education, sustainability, and economy agendas. Next slide, please. And overall, we found that the work as part of Good Food Local has improved coordination and collaboration within participating councils. So they've developed actually internal networks to improve collaboration between teams and stakeholders. Has really sort of triggered this collaborative approach to food within councils in London. And the last bit is around from insights to action and the concrete achievements and the concrete actions that councils reported having taken directly as a result of engaging as part of Good Food Local. So some of them reported launching healthy eating campaigns, work being done on healthier food advertising policies and support for mass catering reforms, as well as development of ground schemes, being able to recruit food coordinator roles, and making business cases for investment. One quote here: Good Food Local has been a helpful structure and inspiration to organise our own activity around food throughout the council. And finally, we end on this really kind of positive slide. Completing the questionnaire helped us realise our gaps and commit to taking Good Food Local forward more seriously. So yeah, I'm very pleased to share all these highlights. And again, these are just the highlights of what's come out of our evaluation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Back to you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to undo my video button, everyone, as always, a problem. Oh, I'm back. Okay, thank you so much for that. And as I say, it's been really great to see some of the things that we hoped would come out of this, but really understand more about how the Good Food Local process really does move councils forward. And I have to say, in London particularly, it was quite a long journey to get councils to sort of understand that. So they really have pioneered this all on your behalf, and that's like why we've been really pleased to be able to evaluate that long-term relationship that we've had. I think if we can now hand over to Craig. So Craig Blundred is the Director of Public Health based up in Hartlepool Borough Council, so very much involved in our cohort in the North East. And Craig is going to tell us a little bit more about how Good Food Local has been working and the benefits they've been seeing in the North East. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, as you said there, I'm Craig Blundred, Director of Public Health for Hartlepool Council, and also the Association of Directors of Public Health North East lead for healthy weight and treating obesity. And I'm just going to run through some of the process we had in terms of working with Good Food Local. Could we go for the next slide, please? Yeah, just a bit of background about how we approached it as Association of Directors of Public Health. And we have a really comprehensive network, regional network, and work very closely to lead, collaborate and advocate for the health of our populations. And that's part of our motivation for getting involved in the Good Food Local, because it enabled us to look at this and the issue of food through that collaborative working lens. We have a healthy weight and physical activity network. If we just go to the next slide, please. Those are our priorities for that network, and it's looking at working across the whole system, across the North East, in collaboration with all of our local authorities. And when we were looking at developing a regional approach for the Good Food Local, we were looking at agreeing a shared framework for the North East to cover all of this, and looking at the benefits of using the comprehensive mapping process covering community partners, projects, producers, growers and anchor organisations. We looked at the engagement plan and was tailoring that to the regional mapping, supported by our network of food partnerships, which is growing at the moment, which is really encouraging. We're able to look at sharing practice through a regional food summit, and the annual benchmarking was providing us with, as you've seen already, some really useful information and really helpful supporting data that we can use to work on this programme of work going forward. We introduced an engagement plan, looked at supporting sharing practice, and are now exploring a regional food strategy, taking a life course approach. Next slide, please. So these are the key areas we've managed to progress, with 13 local authorities having completed the first baseline process, and it's outlined to them how this has enabled them to evaluate the current position as part of the food system work that's going on within councils. And I think probably for all of our local authorities, they found this really useful, because it's given them a comprehensive picture of the food system within their local authorities. And sometimes that's for the very first time we've actually been able to collate all of that information together. As I said before, our food partnerships have been key partners, And the benchmarking works provided people with a vehicle to promote good food across all of our partnerships as well, not just within the local authority. And that's proven to be a significant benefit in opening doors for our partnerships. And we found that we've benefited that particularly in Hartlepool as well. The sharing of good practice is a really key component of our work, and that underpins our collaborative approach. With our celebration event, that allowed us to share work across a number of teams and quite a large geographical area as well, which I think when you look at the Northeast, it's very geographically spread and quite disparate. But working on projects like this allows us to overcome some of the challenges with that. And it's enabled, as you've heard before, it's enabled us to look at quite a lot of opportunities for improvement and prioritizing the resources we put on this. And occasionally, there's opportunities, for example, for doing things once rather than across all local authorities in a slightly different way, and it's been really helpful in terms of supporting that resource allocation. We've also shared case studies through our ADPH website, and we're also sharing those with a wider audience. You'll see on the information platform that local authorities, 11 of our 13 local authorities, have shared their results publicly, which is really good. We're now working to look at a regional action plan, and that's developed outlining our priorities for the Northeast. And we're now starting to extend our reach into conversations with our NHS Foundation Trust as well, looking at how they themselves can engage with the food agenda. So this has been a really positive experience for us across the Northeast. So next slide, please. Thanks. So looking at a local case study from the glorious borough of Hartlepool, one of our stated aims with our food partnership, which we've been in the process of setting up over the last 2 years, has been to ensure within the first 2 years of existence that at least one piece of unused land was owned by the council would be opened for cultivation by interested community members. And that's slightly a wider remit that's emerged from doing the work around Good Food Local. In order to sort of, really focus in on some of those priorities and different priorities. So within the first few months of employing a food partnership coordinator, a resident from one of our more deprived areas sort of contacted them to think about looking at developing an unused bowling green as a community garden from which growing could take place. The area in mention is a bit of a food desert and limited access to affordable and nutritious food. And the lack of sort of general access to good quality fresh fruit and veg in general. An approach was made to our council's Heritage and Open Spaces section, and the process was set in train to look at an asset transfer of the bowling green so that people could start to look at how that could be adapted for growing. And again, the process is underway. It requires engagement with planning and other partners, but I think the work that's been done previously to look at that in terms of the Good Food Local data and information has really helped in that respect. And that's part of a number of different pieces of work that we're looking at in terms of growing and using different growing areas within Hartlepool, such as land owned by our housing association partners and various different bits of land that are disused. So that's quite a big ongoing project we're doing locally that's been as a result of this piece of work. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we've got next steps across the Northeast. We've recognised the momentum we've got, and we're now looking at working with a variety of different partners to look at a region-wide healthy weight declaration. We're aware that there's a patchy uptake for declarations across the Northeast, and it's felt a region-wide declaration would be advantageous to cementing all of this good work in the minds of the public and also our partners. And it will give us the opportunity to frame some of the Good Food Local themes in a much more collective way that will stimulate action. So it's going to look at focusing on the importance of addressing healthy weight as a risk factor, provide us with a collective approach to addressing overweight and obesity across the Northeast and North Cumbria. And also it'll bring on board a wide range of organisations to consider policies and practices with that lens of a healthy weight environment. We hope it'll help to recognise stigma and reduce that, and obviously reduce health inequalities. So the work then that's we've carried out with Good Food Local has really enhanced the partnership working we've been able to do on this, and that's led to all of these different opportunities now, and it's cemented the principles of working locally and has provided us with this jumping off point to look at much more integrated and joined up future food related work, and that's all been supported and made possible through the work we've done with the Good Food Local project. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm having issues with my video. Here I am, back. So thank you so much for that, Craig. And as Craig has explained there, what's been absolutely fascinating for us to see is just the sort of group and collective approach that they have in the Northeast, and how that's been able to add a different dimension to our work across that region, in a way that they sort of collectively have worked through the process together with us. So that's been really interesting. And we should also just say that we are particularly interested in looking at how we roll this out across other regions as well as individually with local authorities. So if any of you are in regional groups and would like to discuss that further, then please do get in touch. It's an area that we are, you know, as we say, particularly interested in, having done this work in 2 regions today. Obviously today is about the individual rollout, which will enable you all to engage with this process, and we have got some opportunity now for some questions, question and answers. So I'm going to invite some of the speakers back to put on their cameras, if that's all right. So Anne, Eleanor, Craig, Hannah, and Emily, if you wanted to turn your screens on. I was going to come to Anne and Eleanor first, really. We had quite a whistle-stop tour of what I know has been actually quite a detailed evaluation. I think the report is out shortly, is that right? So we can all delve into that. I suppose I just wondered if there was anything that was particularly surprising in terms of the research that you did. Obviously, either the work with the councils or in terms of like looking at the evidence behind it. And if you wanted to share any more about sort of some of those highlight moments.
Thanks, Sarah. So yes, I do realise it was a whistle-stop tour, but again, I think we really wanted to give you the highlights. We're organising a kind of bigger event, and we'll delve deeper into the sort of improvements as well that we're suggesting by the council. So just to make, we had, the survey was quite comprehensive in how we tried to understand the impact, and we had both sort of quantitative measures and scales, as well as qualitative open-ended questions where we were able to capture more of the kind of detailed experiences of councils. I think one of the things that struck me was the fact that obviously the different councils operate within very different contexts. Even obviously, you know, it's all across London, but obviously we know there are varieties in their contexts and their experiences. Yet, overwhelmingly, all reported, you know, the positive impact, and what they all agreed very much on what was very, very useful as part of the Good Food Local programme, and specifically the ability to benchmark themselves, to track their scores over time, to have access to the case studies. I think this is definitely something that came out very, very strongly in terms of, you know, being able to see what others are doing. I think it's, you know, again, it's this idea that collectively we're stronger. So if we can share good practice, then this is, you know, this is really, really helpful. And many kind of, you know, testimonies of how actually they used certain examples of good practice to then get inspired and replicate in their local context. So I think, yeah, so if I want to emphasize one bit, this would be it.
Yeah, and we're looking at ways that's really interesting. We're looking at ways that we can sort of bring more of that peer learning and peer sharing into London, as we've sort of seen happens in abundance, particularly in the Northeast, and does happen informally in London. So that's really interesting to hear. So thank you, and sorry for throwing that question at you, Anne, but I just thought there's so much rich information in there, but we look forward to delving into the detail of that report. Vera, did you have some questions from our esteemed audience that you wanted to share?
Yes, we have some fantastic questions coming through. And so there are 2 people who asked the following question. So we'll start with that. So I guess a question to the team. So why did we choose to make the survey available only at the kind of county and unitary authority level rather than by district and boroughs? One of the question askers raised the issue that there can often be variations across districts and boroughs.
Yes, definitely one of the things that we scratched our head about quite a lot, I imagine. But Emily, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, happy to. And as you say, there are a lot of discussions around this. You know, there's different ways to cut the cake, aren't there, with local government? So I think the really important thing to say about this survey and the approach to it is that it's not just a council reporting on the council's activity. It's also a council using the opportunity of the survey to talk to other partners right across their council. So to kind of have those conversations in different areas, but also with their partners. So it's looking at council engagement in wider place-based food work. And obviously for those local authorities that are split between counties and districts and boroughs at the moment, and many of them are actually, you know, looking in a bit of a state of flux at the minute anyway about what that will look like going forward. But what we would expect to probably see in a county's response is that some of those really key partners are going to be their districts and boroughs. And it's designed deliberately as a platform to be able, for you to be able to show what you are doing. So there would be space within answers to say, you know, in X district or X borough, this has been happening. But the overall approach is done across the county so that we're getting an overall sense of place. Because there are certain functions like kind of public health in particular, also things like procurement that tend to be more done at the county scale. So yeah, although we went round and about in circles a bit, the decision in the end that was actually the most practical ways is to include districts and boroughs. But just as we've seen in London, actually some of the power has been about working together that has been generated through the survey. The hope is that will actually encourage some of that cross-working across the tiers, as well as with the wider communities and food partnerships if you have them.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. That's really helpful. And as I say, you know, this rollout took a very long time from London to get to the northeast, and now obviously going to national, and it has involved a lot of thought and a lot of, I suppose, in many ways, a lot of trade-offs around how we can make this survey as useful as possible, but as resource efficient, if you want for a better word, as possible, because we know how pressured local authority staff and teams are. So we could have asked a million more questions in a million different ways, but we had to really limit ourselves to make it as effective as possible. Vera, did you want to bring in another question?
Oh, absolutely. Les Levido asked, I think it's a really good question. Council priorities are often described as delivering targets, as quantified outputs. By contrast, food advocacy groups seek a governance role in shaping council actions in order to enhance collective capacities and societal benefits. So how does the survey method accommodate the latter aim? How can it do this?
So this is like, how does it capture some of those more joined up, complicated, not output related achievements that we would like our local authorities to be doing? Craig, did you have any thoughts on that? You know, I mean, obviously this survey, you know, measures certain things. It doesn't measure others. Should it measure more things, or does it measure enough?
I think from my perspective, it's not just about filling in the survey. It's about the conversations you have to get to the survey answers, and it's about the processes you use, and it's about how you interact with it and interact with those partners, food opportunities or groups in your local area. So I think, you know, whilst the tool is incredibly helpful in that respect, it's also beneficial in terms of those conversations and links you can make. So I think that's probably where I would see the strength of the tool in actually meeting the requirements of what your questioner asked there.
Yeah, that is really helpful. And then I suppose the other element to add to that is that we do ask questions in the governance section about, you know, your partnership and about your ways of working and who you connect with. So in that sense, you know, we do our best to ask a question that is creating the right conditions for that work. And as Craig says, this isn't a survey. If you're looking for a survey that you sit in your office and fill out within 1 hour, this isn't the survey for you. This isn't, you know, what's your personality type. This is a really amazing opportunity for you to go out there and make those connections with other people in your local authority. It gives you the reason to knock on the doors of the people that you may have not spoken to, or the people that you are convening with on a regular basis. So that's the sort of theory of change behind it, I guess. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if there was anything else anyone wanted to bring in on that point. If not, Vera, we have another question.
We do. We have lots of questions coming in. Thanks, everybody. So the next question is from Manisha Bogal, and I hope I've gotten the pronunciation correct, who's asking, how has anyone completed the survey who is not in public health? I'm based in the Civic Pride Waste and Recycling team, but get involved with sustainability projects.
Who wants to take that one? I'm sure we've got some answers. Hannah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, we do have representatives from other departments from our experience in London who have completed the survey. So that can be people who are in the climate department, people who are in the communities or strategy departments. So it is designed really to be a central point for you to be able to go to other people within your council, your local authority, and ask those questions and to work together collaboratively on finding out those questions. So yes, we do have other representatives who have completed it from different departments also. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the benchmarking committee. So we've actually developed this version of the survey with support from other council leads and partners, again, spanning different departments, spanning different roles and different geographical areas who fed into the development of this survey. So I hope also that that will come through in terms of your experience and how you interact with it within your role.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Hannah. And I also, I'm just bringing, I'm trying to keep a little eye on the Q&A, but I am struggling to see it all. But I did see a question about how people can better understand what's needed from filling out the survey, and mentioned that there is a downloadable Word version that you can actually look. But someone suggested that what was needed is a little bit more detail behind how you, even then, how you answer those questions. And just to say, I imagine at some point we will be inviting people that are interested to some drop-ins, and we can sort of talk through some of those approaches that you can take with that. Is that right, Hannah? We'll be able to guide people a little bit through some of the detail of how they then might answer those questions. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to see and reflect on all those questions, but that can definitely be something that you can discuss as a peer group potentially on how people are answering those questions and things that we have tested out with the benchmarking committee. Vera, did you want to come in on any other questions?
Yeah, so just to confirm this kind of downloadable, so there's going to be work to look at actually the metrics to help answer that. Is that correct? So in that case, I think it satisfies one of the other questions. But we have another question, I think a very straightforward one from Ishanikar Purkayasta. Is the public facing aspect optional on the map?
I need to come in on that again. Shall I come in on that one as well?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. It is optional. You'll be able to fill in your survey online and complete all of your questions. And then it's up to you if you choose to publish that or if you choose to keep it private. If you publish it, it will be available on the map that you'll see if you follow the URL that we're sharing. That's the Good Food Local map. So it's obviously completely up to you how you'd like to use those results. We're really encouraging people to publish their results because obviously it helps us to understand what the picture looks like in terms of food policy or practice across England, and also helping to understand where we might be able to do more in terms of focused food work and what those key messages might look like. But it is ultimately down to you and what you would like to do in your local authority.
Yeah, and we really hope that we can work with local authorities to give them the confidence that by going through this process, they can make progress. And we know how complicated and slow that can feel like, but actually this is designed to really celebrate and champion the progress that you're making. And while we know there are leaders and pioneers all over the country, we also acknowledge that there's a real variation in terms of the situation that you have, in terms of your population, the funding levels that you have. So we really want to acknowledge that and try and really make this a sort of, we're all progressing together. This is, there's obviously always some healthy competition, but we want to see progress across the country, and so that everyone has access to these really important systems. So yeah, thank you for that. And we will come back to the issue of like what metrics in particular people will be putting in, because I don't think that will be uniform necessarily for every place, but we can explore that a little bit more as the person suggested. Vera, were there any other questions coming in?
Yes. So I think I quite like this next question. It's a bit of history behind this work. So the question is, how were the London councils, the 23 London councils, initially involved in Good Food Local? Was there a London focus group that they participated in? So where did the exposure to Good Food Local originate?
As the person, I think I wasn't working on it at the time, but I was in the office. I was running Capital Growth at that time, the food growing network in London, but I was definitely around for when that happened. I think that we had a really good relationship with the Greater London Authority and the food policy team that was there at the time. I suppose in a way they de facto acted as our Association for Directors of Public Health. They were the equivalent of that. So obviously having their support behind what we were doing gave a profile, although they were initially quite nervous about the benchmarking of local authorities, but we won them over the end. A lot of it was just direct contacts. We had direct contacts within certain local authorities. We were supporting work on food partnerships and food growing and other activities. And it was good old fashioned contacting the directors of public health, and just a real appetite within London to pioneer some of this work. So it's taken longer to get some of the local authorities who I suppose felt like they weren't doing as much on this, but over time we've really been able to show that as I mentioned before, this isn't all about a race to the top. This is about how do you make slow, steady improvement over a number of years. Doing this work isn't a flash in the pan overnight job. This is something that a local authority can commit to over a number of years. So that's how we did it. I think dogged perseverance of contacting, and I think at some point you get a critical mass, and then everyone else sort of starts to join in, which is why it's so helpful to have those pioneers, and we hope some of you are here in this room today. Vera, any more questions for the audience?
This question is perhaps directed more directly at Craig. Really interesting to hear about the relationship between local authorities and NHS foundations. Tilly Robinson Miles would love to hear Craig's reflections on what the opportunities but also challenges have been in taking a regional approach. So as part of, she also adds, as part of the Good Food Nation Scotland Act, all local authorities and health boards have to produce Good Food Nation local plans, with some health boards having up to 6 local authorities sitting under one their geographical area. For example, NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. So there is a kind of need to work at that regional level in Scotland as well.
So that's quite a long question. I'll try and unpick some of those points. We're really in the early stages of working with the NHS for the first point, but again, it goes back to the network working we have as an ADPH network across the Northeast. We have a comprehensive network of public health consultants in NHS trusts at the moment, and that's been really beneficial in terms of getting the agenda into NHS trusts and working with them on these pieces of work. And again, I think it's the benefit of really good working relationships that helps to drive that, and has helped to link this work in. And again, using the tool to go in and talk to them, it's really beneficial to use the results and say this is the state of play across your hospital patch area as well. So again, early days, but it's about building on those relationships and using the information and data and that you can get from the Good Food Local work. Sorry, there was another part, wasn't there, about?
I think it was about any challenges from working at a sort of regional level.
I think there always is. I mean, I think it's always because you've got different ways of working across different local authorities. I think, and again, we've been working in this way for quite some time, so we've managed to develop a really good working relationship across all of the directors of public health across the Northeast with this. And it's about playing to strengths, looking at what you can do to facilitate rather than barriers. I think it's kind of really sounds simple stuff, but actually it is a lot more challenging in effect in the day-to-day of what we do. But it is about working with others and understanding that. And actually, yes, some authorities will want to move faster than others, but it's about finding a way through so that you can get maximum benefit for everybody involved. And it's just the basis that we keep talking to each other, keep saying how do we do this, and feeding back. And it's about that collaborative working. I don't think there's any mystery to what we do. It's just about keeping the conversations going, understanding everybody else's positions, and respecting that. As I said, you look at some of the things, we've got different approaches to publishing the information, we've got different approaches to what we want to implement, but it's about taking taking the strengths, looking at it, and as I mentioned in the presentation, what can we do together, what can we do collaboratively, what do we only need to do once just to for maximum benefit. And when you talk about things like that, look at saving resources, look at how it we can join things up for better outcomes. It makes it a lot easier to work on a footprint like that.
Great, thank you, Craig. That's really helpful. And yeah, as we know, collective working has many pros and many challenges. And I think that yeah, it's been really great to see and to sort of engage with that in the Northeast. And just a nod to Lucy Chapman, who's been doing a lot of the work of bringing all that together. Lucy has been a real star. So as always, we need our champions of that can bring people together.
Yeah, we have another great question that's been upvoted a few times. So this one is, to what extent can Good Food Local aim to, there's a three-part question actually. I'll give you the two parts first. So to what extent can this approach be used to increase resilience of local communities, connecting to the findings of Tim Lang's latest report on civil food resilience? And two, aim to reduce emissions and help hit the government's targets for net zero by 2050. So those are the first two parts, and there's a third one about how this work connects to some of the wider thinking around things like the land use framework, food security strategy. How are we connecting with other organizations like Green Alliance, Food Farming Countryside Commission? But I think those first two questions, specifically on Good Food Local, how do they drive food resilience and net zero targets?
I'll come in on a sort of general point, and then I might come to a couple of you just to see if you can add in on it. Over the 10 years that we did this, first 10 years of doing this in London before we rolled it, I think that's roughly the number. The survey would change every year because new things would come along, and it was a very iterative process. And to a certain extent, that's great. But in another way, that creates some challenges in that you can't really benchmark your performance. So I think that we have got to a place now where we're sort of fairly satisfied that it provides a joined up sort of holistic enough view of what's going on and what's within the sphere of influence, direct influence of a local authority. So we also have tried to match it with the SFP framework, the Sustainable Food Places framework, because we're aware that we're all being bombarded with there's lots of ways to cut the cake. So we went with the SFP framework, which we know has been really successful in the 100 or so partnerships that are using it across the country. So there has been a sort of decision to try to stop iterating to a certain point, but I also recognize that actually, as really important things come along, that we might start to think about how we add and how we bolt on particular issues. So I wonder if anyone has got any thoughts about the resilience piece. Obviously resilience, Tim has done a great job at making it the sort of zeitgeist of the moment is we are all talking about resilience. I know it's spoken about a lot in our office, in our networks. So how do we think that this in its current format, it deals with this resilience issue, and to what extent could it be expanded to do that? And Anne, I'll come to you, and then I'll come to Emily.
Thanks, Sarah. I think it's a reflection on what you're saying, and also kind of looking at what was answered as part of the impact evaluation. Really, I think there is a fantastic opportunity, I suppose, to be able to even take a step further into the information that's being kind of reported as part of the survey, and potentially, be able to kind of really map these kind of grassroots movements and communities and organizations that are involved as part of the work. And you could imagine a sort of a mega map of networks and kind of making things visible. I think there's a big opportunity around visibility and making sure that who is in the same space as you, and build allyship across that kind of space. And I think that's where the information that's been gathered as part of the survey could be leveraged even a step further, because I think it's there. It's just not necessarily being looked at in this way. And for me, that would be a big part around kind of thinking about resilience, thinking about community connections, and maybe locally, regionally, and then even kind of expanding a little bit more. But yeah, so that would be my kind of
And
view
that's
on
a really
that.
interesting point. And you know, and obviously we've been working with yourselves, you know, on a commission basis, but we're really interested in further conversations with academics and researchers, because we think we're sitting on a bit of a treasure trove of information and data, and also of relationships. It's not always as easy, you know, the relationship building takes quite a long time. So in a lots of ways, this is potentially just the start of how do we use this data and this information to better understand what we are delivering and where the opportunities are on areas such as resilience. So yeah, do come and chat to us if you're an academic that's interested in delving into that. We'd definitely be up for that conversation. Emily, you had your hand up, you put it down. I don't know if it put it down for you, or if you wanted to say something about the resilience or more generally.
I would just like to add just a couple of things. Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'd say the survey's been designed in a way that it asks questions and asks local authorities to ask questions internally. And obviously all these agendas kind of are changing quite quickly, aren't they? So there has been specifically under the kind of each question has a list of pointers, the sort of things you might be considering, that does ask you to ask those questions internally or with your partners around whether you're considering things like local food infrastructure, those pieces of the food system that we need to reassemble or not lose in order to be able to maintain local systems. Also, whether, you know, some of the kind of direct community resilience stuff around things like food growing, whether that with very urban authorities in those smaller spaces, or whether it's around supporting agriculture. Obviously, that looks very different in different spaces. So there are some prompts around that for those conversations. It'll also be interesting to see what comes back, I think, from some of those, you know, those conversations that are being had, and to act as a bit of a repository around some of those questions. Can I just answer it in a slightly different way, Sarah, as well? Because I'm just aware there's been a couple of questions about, oh, can I look at the questions? How do I look at the questions? And actually what I would say is do go and have a look at the questions. You do need to register to look at the questions, but you don't have to submit. And this is another question that's been coming up in the chat, is does this have to be public? So you can literally go in, register for your area, have a look at the questions, and you can also download a Word document, which in practice, you know, I think in our experience, councils are most likely to work on a Word document behind the scenes anyway, asking colleagues. So you can do that as a means to have a look at those questions as well, see what the prompts are, look at what the conversations are that are going to be had as part of the survey. So I would encourage you to just go in and have a little look at what's there. And obviously, as more, we've had wonderful, you know, kind of things filled in from the Northeast, but as more areas get to fill in your surveys, and you do have, there's another question about deadlines, and you do have until probably mid-December to do that, but please don't hang around, you know, there's no time like the present. Then that will, you know, allow you to get an understanding of how the survey is asking around those questions.
Thanks, Emily. That's really helpful to go back into the practicalities of all this as well. Hannah, did you want to come in?
Just to add really quickly to Emily's point about there being a December deadline for when we'll close this year's survey, I just wanted to encourage you to get in touch and to use the resources that we have online. And we're looking at other ways that we can support councils through and local authorities through the process between now and that date. So please do just make sure you use the team to ask any questions that you do have to help you through that.
Exactly. And as I was mentioning, you know, we are probably likely to sort of be able to support those early adopters a little bit more as we sort of start to bed this in a sort of national sense. I also just wanted to come back a bit on the other question that was asked about emissions, and just refer people to our Food for the Planet work. So there is some other work that goes on at Sustain where there is a dashboard, and Vera, I don't know, you might know a little bit more about the dashboard through Food for the Planet, but there is a dashboard which I think does cover some of that stuff around emissions and give a more insight to that. Is that correct? I don't know the detail of all of this, so I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Like many of our kind of mapped and sort of dashboard-led campaigns, it's something you register and you look at sort of, you know, you complete it very similar to this, like your actions in certain areas under different pillars, including procurement, land use, waste. So it allows you to kind of get more into the detail of that area of work. And of course, the Good Food Local survey will mirror the things that we call for at a place-based level on those specific themes. So they do speak to each other.
Yeah. And as I say, you know, we always have the tension of how much detail we can expect from a local authority, how prescriptive we can be. For example, in London for a long time, we asked lots of questions about the Food for Life model, Food for Life served here, but it became a point when, you know, there was a significant number of people not doing Food for Life, and it felt like that wasn't the right thing to ask anymore. So we've had to make this as applicable as we can to all different places. And in terms of land use framework, yeah, again, as I say, that's a whole other bolt-on of potential ideas, and we are definitely up for considering all of those as a framework that really has the flexibility to start to add additional questions, but that has to come, I suppose, with resource to be able to do that, and a meaningfulness to it. So what are we going to do with the data? Who is that with? But we're definitely up for talking with other partners about how we can do that and how we can roll that out in the future. So yeah, the sky is potentially the limit. So thank you on that. I'm aware of the time. That last bit really ran, didn't it? So apologies to everyone. I'm just going to do some final thank yous. Thank you to everyone for the session. Thanks for all of your contributions and questions. As I said in my intro, this is one of the most sort of, for me personally, the exciting and needed areas of work. We really know the critical importance of local authorities to be able to change food systems locally. And whether that's limiting food advertising, supporting communities to grow, tackling food insecurity, or looking at nature and climate friendly food, this is all built into the system. And this is built on years of work, but we are continually innovating and iterating. So we really encourage you to work with us to help you navigate the complexity of all of this with your colleagues and political leaders and others in the community. We have a poll about how you would like to find out more, so please fill in that poll to tell us what would be the best way for us to communicate with you. And over the next 3 to 6 months, we're really going to look at how we can provide extra support to those early adopters. We've heard some insights on the tool, the impact that this can make in terms of systemic actions and guiding your work and your resources. So please do take the opportunity to get involved and share it. As we've said, the one key action for you to do is to really go to the platform, sign up, download, interact with it, and get back in touch with us. We also have our newsletter. You can email us at goodfoodlocal@sustainweb.org. We also, as always, have an event feedback form, and we would really encourage you if you could just spend a minute or two to fill that in now. That is incredibly helpful for us. I'm sure you're all in similar situations, so please share that 2 minutes with us. And other than that, just to say thank you so much. Thanks to the team for a really, really useful, efficient use of an hour so that we can all crack on and get more good food locally. Thank you.